Welcome to This Is Why Musicians Need Therapy, the podcast where musicians talk about the mental stuff that everyone deals with, usually while pretending they're fine on stage. Full disclosure, they're not therapists, just musicians who've definitely needed one. So settle in, laugh with us, learn with us, and if you're trying to figure out this whole being a musician with feelings thing, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. I am Rich Davidson. I'm one of your hosts, and of course I'm joined as always by Eric Forbes and Craig Henry. Guys, how are we doing today?
Peachy.
Great.
Peachy. Great and peachy.
I think I was really going to say peachy too.
Yeah, that would have been...
Glad I didn't. That would have been awkward.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go, editing. I'll just, I'd do something.
Is there an Australian slang for having a good day, Craig?
Having a ripper.
A ripper. Oh, wow.
Cracker of a day.
I like that.
I do like
I'm
that, actually. That's
that.
pretty cool.
I'm stealing that because nobody will know what I'm talking about except for you guys. So give us a little update on the high school reunion, Eric.
Oh,
if you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I already know a little bit, but
I mean, it was walking around the campus and taking my kids out there and stuff. Like during the day, there was a cookout thing, and then there was a baseball game going, a lacrosse game going, and stuff like that. And I saw a couple of old classmates out there, and walking through the campus was a nice bit of nostalgia. Parts of it looked the exact same, but then a lot of it was totally different. They built a lot of new facilities and stuff. But that was cool. And then the reunion party that night, went out with Annie. It was mostly fun because my wife and I got a night out without kids, so that's always a guaranteed.
That's always good.
Good time. But, yeah, I mean, I went to a private school where I didn't exactly, it was different than I wasn't in the same social class, we'll say it like that, as the people I went to school with. And like, there was a house party after the reunion party on campus, and it was at this dude's house that I went to school with, and he has a $3.2 million house that he bought last year.
Oh, yeah.
And
nice.
And it's amazing. Like, it's an amazing house. So it was. I was just like, man, it's hard not to be like, well, I thought I was doing all right back in Wake Forest.
Yeah, well, not anymore.
But there were a couple people I enjoyed catching up with. There were definitely some friends that I wish had come that didn't. But like I said, I got a night out with my wife, and it was good. It was fun. I felt like it was kind of like that scene in the Titanic where Annie and I went to the reunion, and that was like the first class party, and then we ended the night at Shep's in Mint Hill listening to a cover band, and that was like the want to go to a real party, So,
well, what did you say to me? It felt right. It felt like home because you were listening to some cover band butcher or Led Zeppelin tune, and that just seemed
it's more your style.
Yeah, that just seemed. Well, this is where I belong.
It was, overall, I'm glad I went to that reunion, and I should be good now. So,
yeah. Well, I never went to mine, and because I was just, the perception, and of course, you were at yours, and there's just a lot of positioning. Look at me, look at what I did, and I despise that, and I knew if I went there, I would do the same thing, and I'd feel horrible about myself for doing that. So, and I just. Look, I looked at high school as like somebody who risked their lives to leave their country that's under, a dictatorship. That's kind of how I look at getting out of high school. So I wasn't really all that enthralled about revisiting that. And I went to the last 2 years anyway. I went to a pretty small private school, so I didn't really see the appeal, so I didn't go. Maybe I should have though. Who knows? But
we had they had little cheeseburgers, and then the buns were branded Country Day with our logo. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Swanky. Well, that's something. So Craig, how about you? You were in, where were you? High Point.
Yeah, I spent like 12 hours on the road over the weekend, and
Lovely.
not nearly as much actually performing. I was in Atlanta.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Atlanta
Saturday
first,
night,
yeah.
and playing at a bar right like a couple of blocks from the Truist Stadium, where the Braves
okay.
play.
Okay.
So, but there was the show was based around starting when the game finished, and there was a rain delay.
Oh,
So it just kind of
Oh,
threw a bit of
gosh,
a
yeah.
wrench in the works. We didn't start till 10, and the Braves, I think, it was a massive blowout from the Phillies. And, so people were like, we're going home. I mean, we had a decent crowd for a little bit. It was okay.
always better when they win. Always better when they win.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Which I find sort of slightly like, what is it? What's the term? Fair weather friendish.
Oh,
Like, they only like a team if they're winning. Like,
Yeah,
oh, really?
the bandwagon. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, bandwagoners.
And then Sunday I was in High Point, and then back home.
Did you come home with any new
As to
furniture?
what day it is.
That's
I
a
did not.
lovely end table. That's what he told me. Lovely.
I was playing with our friend Jay, the drummer, and he was like, "You realize you just set all your gear up on a $3,000 end table?" I was like, "Oh,
Well,
whoops."
It was.
I'll be careful not to spill my margarita then. Yeah, it was cool though. I've never been to High Point. It's I guess it was their biannual market week. So like people from all over the world in town shopping and looking at, like they're all wholesale buyers,
Oh yeah.
But yeah, really really interesting place. It was cool.
It's on the
Cool
way to the
experience.
mountains, right? It's kind of getting to the foothills there. It's not that far.
It's just
No, it's actually
just south of
between here
Greensboro.
and Charlotte. Yeah,
Yeah.
really. It's just
Okay.
outside of Greensboro. So
Yeah.
I've driven by
yeah.
it. I've driven by it. Never been to it. So,
Yeah.
but if I need some furniture, I know where to go.
That's right.
All right. Well, so look, what I wanted to, it was just, this is kind of rattling around in my head for a while. And I think it's kind of an important and interesting topic, because I believe that there are a lot of people that experience this, especially, people my age, maybe a little younger, but, when you're starting to kind of come out of your 20s and 30s, I think this is something that I think everybody kind of thinks about. And, the question is, when do you give up on your dream? Now, as a musician, for me personally, earlier on, like in my early teens, when I first started thinking, hey, maybe I want to play music rather than just listening to it, I had these aspirations of being a rock star, being in a band, recording albums, touring the world, that sort of thing. And, for a host of different reasons, which probably deserves its own show, that didn't happen. And I kind of, as I got older, I guess I kind of ignored it for a little while, thinking, well, it could still happen. I'm, still in my 30s, maybe. And, it potentially could, but the odds just get less and less as you get older. Could it happen today? Maybe, but it's highly unlikely. And so, I didn't so much give up on my dream as much as my dream was kind of replaced, because I think I outgrew my dream. and I found later in life that there were other avenues to find satisfaction in, with not just music either, but other, because at the end of the day, I think what I wanted to do is I wanted to create. I wanted to be creative. I wasn't really interested in all the trappings of being a rock star or anything like that. I just liked playing music, and I wanted to do that. But as I got older, it was really around the time that I started working at the club that I kind of realized, there are other avenues to creativity. I always enjoyed mixing, which is ironically something I did even before I started playing drums. I was doing that at 12. And I didn't start playing drums till 16. But then I started doing things like video editing, videography, which I really wasn't very good at that. That was probably my weakest point. And then I was getting into like graphic design, making logos and things like that. And then got into mixing recorded tracks and things of that nature. And it kind of dawned on me, hey, I'm having a good time doing this. And since I wasn't thinking, when I wanted to be a rock star in my teenage years, I wasn't thinking about making tons of money. I wasn't thinking about being rich and famous. I was just thinking about doing what I like to do. I realized, hey, I'm actually doing what I like to do. And since it wasn't predicated on making a certain amount of money, I realized that, yeah, that's when I officially said, you know what, I'm not going to pursue being a rock star. And I know everybody was supremely disappointed by that because they knew it was definitely going to happen. And so I guess when I say give up, it's not, it is kind of misleading, because I don't think it is giving up as much as it is pivoting. But that's still difficult, and there's a lot of reasons why that can be difficult. And I think a lot of people have to deal with that, especially my age, when they realize, hey, I'm not going to be that rock star that I thought I was going to be in my 20s.
Well, we talked a little bit about this, I think, in our last episode, where you talked about your parents, Rich, and you said you never really knew what their dreams were. If they had dreams, maybe they had things that they, quote, gave up on, but you never knew. But I think I definitely agree that dreams change, and they should change as you go through life. And I think, definitely for me in dueling pianos, I've had nights where the night flies by and I look back on it and think that, I was living the dream in that night. I was really doing what I felt, I'm supposed to do, and felt really fulfilled, and, felt like I had made some kind of change in, entertaining people, making them forget about their life or whatever. And in those nights, I felt like, really like I was living my dream. There's nights that it hasn't felt like that, but, as your life progresses, as your situations change, as you learn about new things, as you gain new interests, your dreams are going to change. And as you get older too, I think being older, it would sound exhausting to like be on the road touring as a rock star, and then you're, whatever that dream was satisfying, whether it was, wanting to play in front of people, create, write songs, whatever, you find other ways to do that. And that kind of becomes the new thing you're chasing. I think, and giving up is a negative, kind of has a negative connotation with it, but pivoting, just moving on and finding a new way to do what you feel like are your gifts and create something. It gives you something to chase and something to work towards, and I think that's a healthy way for dreams to.
Yeah, and it's funny too because what you said kind of reminds me of something Craig talked about in one of our past episodes, where I think it was the first episode, where maybe you can expound upon this, Craig, where you were talking about living out of a suitcase for the better part of a decade was starting to get a little bit old.
Yeah, I think it was a really interesting sort of experience through my 20s, getting to kind of travel the world. But like you said, Rich, it did get kind of tiring after I did it for nearly 10 years. But that experience kind of just fell into my lap. And initially I almost didn't want to take it. I find like as I've gotten older, like I always thought I was pretty like go with the flow, pretty like, open to new experiences and whatnot. But I sort of realized as I get a little bit older, I'm maybe a bit of a fuddy-dud. Like I actually kind of, I like my creature comforts. I don't really like change too much, and I wonder if that affected me a little bit through my career. Like initially I was given this opportunity to drop out of music school and start touring. And I was like, oh no, I should finish my degree. I should, it's like, I think looking back, I didn't want to take a risk. I didn't want to change. I had already dropped out of a science degree to start a music degree, and that was a big deal for me to switch, studies essentially. So, but anyway, in fact, my parents were really encouraging. They were like, look, just try this touring job for a year, and if you don't like it, school will always be there. You can always go back to school. So, and I did, and that was 9 years of like incredible experiences. I ended up meeting my now wife here in the States. That's how I ended up living here. But when that touring finished, I was like, okay, now what's next? And I just now I look back and kind of going, yeah, like I was like, oh, I'll move to LA and I'll get a record deal and I'll, or I'll be a producer or something. And I just never really took the risk there again. I was like, I got a job in dueling pianos. It was 3 or 4 nights of weekly performing, steady paycheck, a ton of fun. It was still very fulfilling. But it wasn't, to name drop, it wasn't performing at the Sydney Opera House or the Royal Albert Hall, which I had done. So that was a bit of definitely a mind shift. And I think I went, oh, this is comfy. This is like, yeah, this works for right now. And then I just never really took the risk to do, well, I was going to say bigger and better things, but that's subjective, right? So yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about the risk factor.
Well, stability is a dream. Comfort is a dream. And like,
indeed,
even so, talking about dueling pianos as being the more stable of those, the more predictable. Even so, compared to a lot of other things, generally speaking, the life of a musician is pretty unpredictable, and that's something I'm dealing with now. Like, your places close. Nothing. Things can just change and end really quickly in our business, and stability is a dream, something where I know this can be long term. That creates a sense of comfort, and a lot of people, me included, really thrive with that, really do well with that, and that becomes something you're chasing, is just that stability. So yeah.
Well, and it's kind of going back to, piggybacking on that a little bit, going back to what Craig said, I think that was one of the biggest issues why, my dream of, being in a band and all this didn't happen, was because I just didn't take the risk. Some of it was just ignorance. I I thought, hey, somebody will recognize how good I am, but that's really not how it works. I mean, there are exceptions, but that's not how it works, and
Yeah.
and then going back to what Eric said about the stability, well, then you try to find some sort of stability, whether it's playing music or whether it's doing something else. And then you kind of get locked in. And I don't even think that's a bad thing, because especially as you get older, my wife and I have been married for 33 years. I got married when I was 22, and 2 years later we had kids. And now you have responsibilities, and the time to throw caution to the wind was before kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then it becomes more difficult to do that, and look, there's something good about stability, and it's funny because I heard a quote, a snippet of an interview from David Bowie just recently, a couple days ago, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I probably won't get it right. But he was talking about it's very dangerous for an artist, whether they're a musician, a writer, a painter, or whatever, but it's very dangerous for an artist to do what other people expect them to do, because that's usually when the artist produces their worst work. You need to, I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it, but he goes, you need to push yourself. You need to push yourself and go a little bit deeper. And when you feel unsteady, and when you feel like you're in deep enough water to where your feet really don't touch the ground, that's when you're in the best position for doing something really exciting. And now that's good advice, but that's very difficult to do as you get older and as you have more responsibilities. It's just, life oftentimes dictates how you see your dreams, or how those dreams change. And I don't think it's a bad thing, but I do think that there's a lot of negative connotation about that, not just from an inward standpoint, an internal standpoint, where you're having to say, okay, I spent all these years thinking I was going to do this, and now I'm not going to do it. That's a major shift. And there's going to be some difficulties with that. A lot of people feel, maybe not so much stress, but a lot of depression about that, because something that they've invested maybe a lot of time, maybe a lot of money, definitely a lot of thought and energy. Well, they realize that's not going to happen. And see, those are the times where finding that other outlet, whatever it is. Like I'm granted, we talked about this last time. The job I'm doing right now for my day job isn't creative at all, but we're doing this. I'm doing a lot of graphic design work. I'm still mixing music and mixing multi-tracks and stuff like that. I'm having a good time, and I would love for that to replace my day job at some point. But I don't know. I don't feel as if maybe I did miss out. I don't know. But, the truth is we'll never know. And so what? I'm enjoying what I'm doing now.
Yeah, there's a really fine line for sure. And I want to go back to what you said. It was Sting that said that?
David Bowie, actually.
Okay. Not really close. But there is.
Same thing. They're both British.
Yeah, they're British. They're British. That works.
Isn't Sting is Welsh, right?
Oh, I guess no, I don't think so.
Oh, I don't know. Oh.
Well, if we get famous and he's on the show, he might kick your ass for that, because
yeah, probably would.
He's old, so.
Well, Craig knows He knows his stuff. I'm not going to go against Craig again because I'm still embarrassed about the Kennedy quote.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, he's probably Welsh then.
There's a really fine line between stability and stagnation too. You definitely got to find that balance of, always having something to work towards and take a risk and make yourself feel uncomfortable. I think those are important, just ways to grow and make sure you're, getting the most you can. Sometimes there's depression, there's things that really just make it hard to take a chance and to do. Addiction to routine is for sure a thing that I deal with as well. And having that mindset of always trying to find some way to grow, trying to find some way to learn something new, put something creative out there for people to see. If you can will yourself to do that, then it can take away some of the unhappiness you may feel from not living out a dream you had years ago.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the thing too, and I think there's I saw a meme. It's like somebody asking a question. They were like, "What's that thing when you've given up and you don't care anymore?" And somebody said, "Well, the answer is you play bass in an AC/DC cover band."
God.
And it gave me a chuckle. And honestly, I've seen a lot of stuff online, like on TikTok and Instagram, just like totally dissing anybody who plays in a cover band. And I'm like, look, if that makes you happy, if you're a musician and you want to play music and that's your avenue, who cares what anybody else says?
Well, that's a false truth too. Is like you can be creative and inspired and everything playing cover songs. Like that's.
Well, we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You guys have done really well doing that. I wouldn't say it's a cover band per se, but even still, it's like, look, if you're enjoying it, don't ask too many questions. Like, I'm getting old enough in life where if I like something, I don't ask a lot of questions. I just enjoy it. I'm not going to dissect it. And if I'm having a good time playing covers, well, then I don't care what somebody on Instagram or TikTok says. I don't care what some professional says, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that." Oh, to hell with them,
Well, no one's going to come hear my songs, so where else am I going to play?
Yeah. That Welsh guy that used to play in the Police, I'll play his songs. Oh, dear God.
Here's a question for you guys. Philosophically zooming out a little bit, maybe you've touched on this a little bit, but I'm not to scratch a nerve or whatever the expression is, but hit a nerve. But just generally, like, do you guys feel like you are the sorts of people who even believe philosophically in quote unquote regrets?
I do to an extent.
Okay.
And it's probably more internal than anything. But of course, I think we all internalize so much. I will break down everything that I do. I will listen to this podcast while editing it and think, oh, I should have said that. I should have said that. Yeah. Is there a lot of significance to that? No, I don't think so. Because maybe if everything went to shit, but I don't. Yeah, I guess your answer. I guess the answer is not really.
Yeah,
not about anything significant.
It's tough to answer on the spot, but yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to try and break down my regrets, I would definitely think that I, regret more things that I haven't done than things that I have. I guess that's what we're talking about, going back and regretting not taking that chance, not singing at this time, not being bold and trying to make, a connection, talk to this person, whatever, get yourself out there. There are times that I've, maybe shied away from potential opportunities. And yeah, I can, look back and wish I had, but it's not, it's not it's definitely not something that shows up in my, everyday thought. So.
And to be even a little more philosophical about this, to answer your question, I think for the bigger things, I don't stress too much, because I don't know what their impact would have been on where my life is today. Now, there may be some things about my life that I'm not happy with, but I've been married to my wife for 33 years, and I love my wife. And as nuts as my kids drive me sometimes, I couldn't imagine life without them. Had I fulfilled, I don't know, my dream, that may have very well not happened. And I mean, I can't even begin to predict what it would have been if I had been able to succeed in that venue. that would be kind of, it would be fruitless to do that, because there are maybe there are things about my life that I'm not overly thrilled with right now, but there's a lot of good, and I if doing those things and getting that sort of success that I wanted meant I wouldn't have that, looking back now, I don't think I'd regret that.
Well, that's the key word that you said at the end, Rich. Success. And how do we define success when it comes to the arts, right? And looking back on things you've done in your life, how do you gauge them as successful or not successful when it comes to your dreams? I'll take my dad as an example. Just incredibly talented classical vocalist. Had a lot of teachers that told him to go up to New York and try and make a run at being a famous vocalist there. He really had the talent for that. And the way it was told to me is that he took a high school choir directing job in Charlotte to provide a stable life for our family. Now, he was at that job for over 40 years, and during those 40 years, he affected, inspired, motivated countless people in music. I would call his career a huge success. Even just seeing, he came with us to the cookout, and seeing people that have been to Country Day that were in his class that wanted to talk to him, and the things they had to say about him and how he affected their life and stuff. He couldn't have been more successful. And compare that to the conventional success of tons of money and tens of thousands of sold out shows and fame, being adored. Those are all, I guess, intoxicating things for sure. But to say that that's successful and taking the stable approach is not as successful, I would strongly disagree with that.
I don't think there's one answer to it. There just isn't. Everybody's got to deal with facing the fact that maybe that dream that they had when they were younger isn't going to happen, and maybe it's for the best that it didn't. In some cases, I'm sure that's true. In other cases, maybe not. But I guess the most important thing is just to kind of move forward. Look, it's going to be difficult. Anything that you invest a great deal of time on, whether it's just something that's been playing in your mind since you were a kid, or maybe you've invested time and money into it and it just didn't happen. There's going to be some fallout from that. There is.
Yeah.
And, I think the best way to deal with that is to sometimes, like for me, it fell into my lap. For me, I'm like, hey, I'm doing this. I'm actually having a good time. I'm feeling creative behind the mixing console. I'm feeling creative when I'm designing a logo. I'm feeling creative when I'm mixing multi-tracks and stuff like that. Maybe somebody has to look a little deeper. Maybe it doesn't fall into their lap, but the most important thing that a person who's facing that can do is don't question too much. You know what? Maybe take a risk. For example, if you're a musician, a guitar player, and you never made it big, maybe taking a slot in a local band playing covers doesn't sound appealing to you, but I would say give it a try. You might find that you like it. You might find that's your creative outlet. Or it could be something, maybe you start making production music to put on these websites that, like I get production music for my videos all the time. There's so many different outlets today, and it doesn't have to be, signing a record contract and recording albums and touring the world. Maybe that's for some people, but it's not for everybody, and not everybody who wants to do it is going to be able to do that. That's just reality. But there's a lot of ways to be creative. There's a lot of ways to do what you love. If you love playing an instrument, you love writing, you love painting, there's lots of ways to do that these days than there ever were. And I just say, don't overlook that, because that's going to be the best way to deal with any sort of disappointment you might be experiencing from a dream that was not realized. Yeah.
What does Shia LaBeouf say? Just do it.
Him and Nike, I think they said that.
Yeah,
too.
put on your Nike shoes.
Yeah, Nike was first. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, we'll go with Shia LaBeouf. That's fine.
Well, I've thought too, maybe as a final thought too, I remember hearing, I think it was Justin Timberlake talk about dreams. And I remember seeing an interview where he was talking about, he was like, when I was a kid, I just knew, it was like in my bones that I was just going to be a performer and be successful, And the inherent sort of skeptic in me was like, oh, so that was my problem. I just didn't dream enough, that's
You're not dreaming enough. No.
Dream up, stupid. Yeah, that's right. So,
well, what did Bill Maher say? There's only going to be a certain amount of people that are going to be able to be painting on the cave walls. And some of us have to go out and gather food. There's only so many people that are going to be able to do that. But whether it's a part-time thing or whatever, like I said, I'm playing drums probably less than I've ever played before, and it just works for me now. Because drums actually are probably, it's certainly not on the top of the list of things that I want to do. I still love doing it. I love staying connected with the drums, and I'm always going to be a drummer. But man, there's a lot of other things that I get equal, if not more, joy from doing. And I would have never thought that. Maybe even as early as 10 to 15 years ago. So you have to allow your dreams to pivot, for sure. You have to allow them to change. Well, let's allow them to pivot then. That's what we're going to do.
There you go.
Once again, we've solved.
Figured it out. That's it.
I tell you, more people should listen to this podcast because we
have solutions.
We do. Well, anything left to add, or I think we should end it here?
No, I think it's
all
great.
Right.
It's yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for participating in the conversation. Appreciate it as always. And for everybody listening, thank you. If you want to check us out, we are on YouTube and Spotify. If you like our podcast, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on YouTube or the follow button on Spotify, and share the podcast if you really like it, and leave us a comment and all that good stuff. We would love to hear from you. So for myself, Eric Forbes, and Craig Henry, we'll catch you next time.